Hi boys and girls, it's Mrs. Aregi. Today we're going to stay in the United States, but we're going to fly right here. We're in Texas and we're gonna go across the United States all the way up here to Pennsylvania. That's near New York, and we're gonna stop right there. And we're going to talk about an artist by the name of Horace Pippin. Now, sometimes it's good, well, many times it's great to do art, isn't it? I love doing art. But sometimes it's good to study people, study artists, look at their work, going to museums and closely looking at what they do, their strokes, the colors they use. You learn a lot that way too. So today we're going to listen to a story on Horace Pippin, and he does a specific kind of art, and I'm going to show you, first I'm going to show you his picture so you'll see what Horace Pippin looks like, and there he is. And I'll show it to you after the story again because there's something I want you to look at, but he does folk art. Now, what is folk art? Well, let me show you a few paintings. This is folk art. Folk art is art that shows what a certain culture does. For instance, here is showing how the people in Haiti dress, because these are people from Haiti. Here is another one that I have that's from Mexico, and it shows the pottery that they use and kind of the way they dress also. Here's a plate from Jerusalem, and it shows what their culture's like and some of the buildings and how colorful it is. So that is folk art. And this is what this artist does. Now, I'm going to show you also, because when I read the story, you're going to hear a few words and maybe you won't recognize them. And they're art words, so I want you to understand them. So that is a canvas, and it's a type of fabric canvas, and that's what artists use to paint on. You don't have to paint just on a canvas. You can paint on anything, on wood, on rocks, but this is how they paint big pictures. Here, this is an easel. This holds the canvas. So if you do a lot of art, you're gonna want one of those because it just holds things for you better. Okay, so I am going to show you also charcoal. Now, charcoal, you're gonna hear it in the story. The charcoal looks like this, and if you remember a barbecue grill and how they put charcoal in there, those little black round things that they put in there and burn, that's charcoal. And they also make pencils like this that you can draw with. Now, we won't use them in elementary because it's kind of not good to breathe it. It's not good for you to, it's very powdery, and it's not healthy to breathe. You probably want to wear a mask or something like that. But anyway, I am going to move the camera in just a second so you can look at the pictures as I read. But you're going to love this story because I hope you're inspired by him. And I want you to think of what the moral of the story is, what you're gonna learn from it, okay? So let's see if you be thinking as I'm reading, what am I learning from Horace Pippin? Let me tell you also, he had a very interesting family. His father was from Haiti and spoke French. His mother was Puerto Rican, so they spoke Spanish. And then, of course, they lived in America. So Horace knew 3 languages. Some of you that know more than one language, that's great. It's something good to have. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to move the camera down here so you can see as I read a splash of red. The Life and Art of Horace Pippin, written by Jen Bryant, illustrated by Melissa Sweet. Okay, here we go. On February 22nd, 1888, the town of Westchester, Pennsylvania, celebrated a holiday. That day, in that same town, Daniel and Christine Pippin celebrated the birth of their son, Horace. And that actually also happens to be George Washington's birthday, by the way. Horace grew fast, so fast that his mother could barely keep up with the mending. "He'll be a giant someday," the neighbors would say. Grandma Pippin smiled at Horace's long legs and big hands. She figured the neighbors were right. Grandma's hands were big too, rough and scarred from her slave days in Virginia. But they were just fine for giving Horace hugs. "The bigger part of you," she told him, "is inside where no one can see." When Horace was 3 years old, the Pippins moved to Gosham, New York. As the family grew larger, everyone helped out. Horace put his big hands to work. He fetched flour for his mother. He sorted laundry with his sisters. He played with his baby brother. He held the horse while the driver delivered milk. At night, he piled wood for the stove and arranged dominoes so his grandmother could play. Then, if he could find a scrap of paper and a piece of charcoal, he drew pictures of what he'd seen that day. Horace loved to draw. He loved the feel of the charcoal as it slid across the floor. He loved looking at something in the room and making it come alive again in front of him. He loved thinking about a friend or a pet, then drawing them from the pictures in his mind. At school, he sat quietly at his desk, but his big hands were always busy. "Make a picture for us, Horace," his classmates said, and Horace did. His pictures made people happy, except when he made some next to his spelling list. That made the teacher mad. Look at the pictures below. Do you see what he's doing to his spelling test? But Horace couldn't stop. He's saying, "Pictures just come to my mind, and I tell my heart to go ahead." I like that. One day, Horace saw a funny face in a magazine. "Draw me and win a prize," it said underneath. Horace drew the face and sent it off. A few weeks later, a package arrived. Inside, Horace found colored pencils, a pair of brushes, and a box of paint. "Congratulations," said the note. Horace had won his first real art supplies. "Paint a picture for us, Horace," his sisters cried. And Horace did. He painted everyday scenes in natural colors. Then he added a splash of red. Horace was in 8th grade when his father left for good. The family needed money, so Horace quit school and went to work. For several years, Horace's big hands were always busy, stacking grain sacks at a feed store, shoveling coal at a rail yard, mending fences on a farm, carrying luggage at a hotel, making brakes in an iron factory, packing oil paints into large wooden crates. Looking at these made Horace remember winning the art contest, how proud he'd been, how he'd loved those colored pencils, those brushes, and his first real box of paints. Horace was a big man now, with big responsibilities. Still, he loved drawing as much as he always had. He used charcoal, broken pencils, whatever he could find. "Make a picture for us, Horace," the other workers said, and Horace did. Far across the ocean, a terrible war had begun. Horace's big heart wanted to help. He joined the army and sailed away. In France, Horace and his regiment dug deep trenches for protection. There were no blankets or beds. It was always wet and cold and dark. I have not seen the sun in more than a month, Horace wrote. He wrapped his big hands around a rifle. Planes droned overhead. Shells exploded. Gunfire rattled through the night. If the fighting stopped for a while, Horace put down his gun and picked up a pencil. "Make a picture for us, Horace," his soldier friends pleaded. And Horace did. He filled his notebooks one by one. One day he climbed to the top of the trench. A shot rang out. Horace felt pain in his shoulder. He was hit. Horace was glad to be alive, but the bullet had badly damaged his right arm. When it healed, he couldn't lift or move it in the way he used to. Now, when someone said, "Make a picture for us, Horace," Horace could not. After the war, Horace came back to the United States and met Jenny Wade. Jenny was a hard worker. She loved to cook. Horace was a hard worker too, and he loved to eat. It was a good match. They married and settled down in Westchester. Horace was 32 years old, as big and as strong as ever. But because of his injured arm, he couldn't find a job. "How much can you lift?" the hiring boss asked. And that was the end of that. So Horace did what he could. He organized a Boy Scout troop. He umpired baseball games. He took the neighbors' children fishing. When Jenny started a laundry business, Horace delivered the cleaning clothes. As he walked along the streets of Westchester, his fingers itched to draw all the colors and textures he saw. Lacy white curtains billowing in the windows, a splash of red geraniums blooming on a step, a yellow cat sprinting down an alley, deep green vines spiraling up a wall. At night, his old home in Gosham, his grandmother's slave days, and the Bible stories she told made pictures in his mind. He longed to draw them too. But how? His right arm was weak and painful to lift. The iron poker stood by the fire, straight and tall as a soldier. Could he? With his left hand, he grasped his right wrist. He thrust the poker into the flames until it glowed red hot. Using his good arm to move the hurt one, he scorched lines into wood. "Make a picture for us, Horace," the neighbor said, and Horace did. With practice, his arm grew stronger, his hand steadier. "Maybe now," he told Jenny, "I can try painting." There was no money for art supplies, so Horace used an old brush and leftover house paint he found in the alleys. For a canvas, he used a clean piece of cloth. Every day and late into the night, Horace worked on his painting. He used gray, black, and white, the somber colors of war. Here and there, he added a splash of red. He used 100 layers of paint. He decorated the frame with tiny sculptures. 3 years later, he finished. Now, as he delivered laundry or fished in the river, new ideas came, but he didn't paint them right away. Before he reached for a brush, Horace planned each new scene in his head. So these are excellent pictures excellent examples of folk art. He painted the milkman and his wagon, working women in the kitchen, children playing games in the yard, cotton fields and log cabins, John Brown and Abraham Lincoln, war scenes and Bible stories, men singing on a corner. Horace hung his paintings in a shoe store window. $5 each, said the sign. He hung others in a restaurant. He even traded one for a haircut. People admired Horace's paintings, but no one bought them. Then the president of a local artist club saw Horace's pictures. He told his friend, the famous painter N.C. Wyeth, to come see them too. Wyeth agreed. Horace's paintings were good, very good. Do you have more? The men asked. Horace showed them his work. He held his breath as they looked and talked. Finally, they said, "You should have your own art show, a one-man exhibition right here in Westchester." Horace could hardly believe it. He shook hands with the men. When they left, he celebrated with Jenny. People came from all around to see Horace's paintings. Magazines wrote articles, reporters took photos, an art dealer told Horace he would help him sell his work. More than 40 years had passed since Horace won his first box of paints. Now, at last, everyone knew he was an artist. Horace became famous. His paintings hung in big city galleries. Museums displayed them. Collectors admired them. Movie stars bought them. Once again, Horace's big hands were always busy. And if you stood outside his house late at night, you might see him leaning toward his easel, his left hand holding up his right, painting the pictures in his mind. And there you see Horace again. Do you see he's holding his hand with the other so he can draw? Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. And did you think of a moral? What did you learn from this story? If you learned that to never give up, then you are right. That is the moral of the story. Never give up. Look at Horace. He just continued and kept trying, and then he became famous. Of course, this was over 100 years ago. This was World War I, so it was a long, long, long time ago. But anyway, I hope you're inspired by Horace Pippin, and I want to leave you with our song. So if you're ready, I hope you're learning it. Reduce, reuse, recycle. Words, we must do all three. If you don't, our planet will suffer. That's the reality. We'll see you later, boys and girls. Goodbye.